and gentlemen, my name is Georgia Rose. Please permit me to welcome you to the final evening of our annual public parenting lecture series, hosted by the Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work of the University of the West Indies, Western Jamaica campus, in partnership with the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Unit of the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the Western Regional Health Authority Mental Health Unit. Welcome once again. This evening is our concluding night of a three-part lecture series. On day one, we commence with our keynote address from adolescent health specialist, Dr. Abigail Harrison. And last evening, we stirred conversation as we delved into the rights of the Jamaican father with Dr. Alfred Dawes and attorney at law, Natalie Reid. Ta-Nehisi Coates presents a compelling argument in his acclaimed novel, The Water Dancer, about the power of our stories. As a people, we don't often share our stories, and as such, we often forget how universal our lived experiences are. This evening, we conclude our lecture series with stories from mothers and fathers who live the life of parenting like most of us. Our esteemed host, consultant pediatrician, Dr. Lisa Banton, will guide us through our conversations with our panelists this evening. Dr. Banton is a consultant pediatrician with tremendous experience in private practice over the past decade. She is the immediate past president of the Paediatrics Association of Jamaica. Of more significance, however, is her passion for pediatrics and her love for all children. As a clinician who works with parents and children daily, she comes from a place of understanding, warmth, love, and knowledge. A regular contributor to the health section of the Jamaica Gleaner, she has penned stories on a variety of topics ranging from immunization to sexting and other challenges we as parents delve with on a daily basis. Today, she stands in more acclaimed shoes, that of a mother to three amazingly distinct boys. Dr. Banton, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you so very much, Georgia, for that introduction. Thank you so much. And as she mentioned, tonight is the final night of our parenting conference, and we've had 2 days of some really good information and thought-provoking discussion. And tonight will be no different. Our discussion tonight is entitled, Holding Ourselves During a Global Pandemic, Strategies for Self-Care and Parenting. Yes, we forget that in order to serve others, we have to serve ourselves first. We first have to fill up our cup before we can fill up other cups. And we sometimes forget that. So we are going to have that discussion tonight. How can we look after ourselves and parent during this very challenging time? And I have 3 panelists with me tonight. First, I'm going to introduce Miss Stacy and Dennison Herron. So Mrs. Dennison Herron is a registered architect with a master's in architecture from the University of Technology. She has been with Harold Morrison and Robert Woodstock Associates Limited, an industry leader for over 14 years, governmental, educational, institutional and commercial in both Jamaica and Barbados. She's currently she's currently the president with additional committee and the practice committee. I'm not sure how she can take on all these roles and also be a wife and a mother to 2 boys. And yet she has all of these roles that she has taken on. She has a passion for papercraft and do-it-yourself projects, which she channels to create amazing pop-up gift cards. Welcome, Ms. Dennison.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Thank you.
Our second panelist. is Mr. Joseph Herron. So he is going to function tonight. Mr. Herron has been in education since 1994. He has been a PE teacher, a self-discipline, he has gone through the gamut of education, and he's currently the safety and security coordinator. He's a strong advocate for her father's services. I'm sorry, but I think we have chipped out there. So let me go over strong advocate for fatherhood and father rights, country representative of Caribbean Male Action Network, and he's married with 5 children, two sons and 3 daughters. So he too is very experienced to join in this discussion of how we should take care of ourselves and parenting during this pandemic. Welcome, Mr. Herron.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. Third panelist tonight is Ms. Judy Collins. So Ms. Collins, she's a former banker and now entrepreneur in the microfinancing industry. She's doing doctoral studies with the University of Phoenix, and she is a woman of faith. She's the mother of 3. She has a 10-year-old son, a 3-year-old daughter, and an 18-month-old son. So she too is very experienced to join in this discussion. So welcome.
Your Wi-Fi is acting up. Do you want to disconnect? I think you want to disconnect and join us back?
Okay, will do.
Please and thank you.
Will do.
Thank you. I know she was introduced as Ms. Collins, am I correct? That's correct. So Ms. Collins is a former banker and now an entrepreneur in the microfinance industry, but she has now taken on one of her greatest feats. She is a new PhD student and a full-time parent to 3 lovely children, 2 boys and a little girl. And she is completely across the spectrum as a parent because she has an older child about to enter into adolescence and a toddler. So that's your responsibility. Is Dennison?
Thank you.
I'm not hearing.
Are you hearing?
Mrs. Stacy and Dennison is currently the president of the Jamaica Institute of Architects. So quite an accomplished lady. She is a woman of faith. She is happily married, has 2 lovely boys who are both in, what would we say, the middle childhood life. So she's juggling motherhood and working. She's also a lecturer at the Caribbean School of Architecture. Am I correct? Yes, yes. So she wears many hats. And our final panelist, Mr. Joseph Herron. Is Mr. Herron with us? Is with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, we just want to make sure Mr. Herron is with us. So I'm just stepping in for our moderator. So please do forgive us. So Mr. Herron has a very long portfolio, so I want to make sure that I get it correct. Yes, he has been in education since 1994, from PE to Spanish teacher to guidance counselor to dean of discipline and acting principal. He is currently the safety and security coordinator for Region 1 of the Ministry of Education and Youth and Culture. He is a strong advocate for fatherhood, fathering rights and responsibilities, and parental involvement. He doesn't want me to tell you this, but I believe that a little birdie whispered to me that he was recently honored as Father of the Year. Is that correct, Mr. Herron?
No, it wasn't Father of the Year, but I got an award for fathering. So in some regard, to some people, yes, I'm Father of the Year. But it was a national award, no?
Quite an award.
Yes, I'm honored regardless.
He's married with 5 children, 2 sons and 3 daughters. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen. And we want to thank you for joining us and for being willing to share your stories as parents. So I want to start first with Mr. Herron. The noble privilege of being the sole father with us on the panel. And the first question I wanted to throw out to our panelists is, what has your experience as a parent been like since this pandemic emerged?
So I'm going first?
Yes, Joseph, you're first.
Experience during this pandemic as a parent? Wow. Exciting and quite interesting. The exciting part would be the education. Our daughters keep us on our toes where education is concerned. The online classes keeps us energized and, as I said, on our toes. We have 2 younger daughters who are involved, 1 5, 1 6, and believe it or not, it's the 5-year-old that keeps us busy. The 6-year-old is very straight, fine, no problem. She stays where she's placed and has her classes. However, my 5-year-old, on the other hand, she's a busybody. Put her one place, and as you turn your eye, she just disappear, right? But they're both enjoying school. This has become their normal. It's not like us where we have to just adjust. No, this is them. They have adjusted quite quickly, and they're very happy. One more than the other about not going to school. One really does not want to go to school and actually prefers online. Other one really wants to go to school, But it's on the other hand, for us, on the professional side, it has suffered because reports are due. We don't meet deadlines as we would have done, and so our work hours have shifted, so that part of it. But outside of that, we're managing. It's fine. We're coping. We're enjoying it. We're quite happy to spend more time. As an educator myself, I enjoy going through classes with my children. It's quite refreshing for me. I really enjoy that part, especially the one who needs extra attention in front of it. The one who turns off her screen. You have to stay with her every step of the way. But outside of that, I'm actually enjoying it. Yeah.
More time turning off the screen than actually listening to the class. That's very comforting and refreshing. Dr. Banton, you're back with us.
Thank you. I'm so sorry, but this is just telling you about the times, how you really just have to be able to twist and turn. So I had to turn on my hotspot and use that as a hotspot. And this just tells us the kind of the stress that we have had to go through, or we are going through during this pandemic, the many things that we have to do and how we have to be able to just turn and move at the snap of a finger. Thank you so very much for sitting in for me, Georgia.
And I'm here to support you, as is tonight supposed to be. All right.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so very much for that, Mr. Herron. Thank you for letting us know, for starting off. So I am going to throw that same question to Ms. Collins.
Thank you so much for that question, and thank you for having me on this panel. It has been an interesting ride that we don't know when this roller coaster of a ride is going to end. From a professional side, as an entrepreneur in the microfinancing industry, it has had a really negative effect on lending and collection. So I have that carrying as a parent because this is my work. From a parental perspective, I don't know why it is that prior to the pandemic, I did not realize that my 3 children needed 3 different types of mothering. It was not until we were, I don't know, we had to be still with each other that I realized that my 10-year-old needs a different mother than my 3-year-old daughter, than my 18-month-old son. The transition into online learning, in order to support my 10-year-old son through this transition, I went ahead and did some Zoom classes because I didn't want him to be able to get around me. Mommy, this isn't working. I didn't want him to try and trick me, you know? So I did that so we could speak the same language. I'm a lover of books. I was not ready for this online virtual world. So both he and I were thrusted in it together. And I told him that we would just learn and write it out if it ever ends together. My 3-year-old, who was registered for school, did not end up going to school because of the pandemic. And like Mr. Herron said, 3-year-old, 5-year-old, very busybody, not to mention the 18-month-old. I have recognized though that I no longer am expected to be just a parent, but I'm expected to be a child with them also because I am their only friend. Because of the lack of socializing, I have to be on the floor with them more so now than even before. So it is a lot to be carrying professionally and then splitting myself into 3 different mothers just to support all 3 different kids. That's it. For moderator. Ms. Rose?
I'm so sorry. Thank you so very much, truly. So I'm going to now turn to Miss Dennison Herron. Just to start off, you can let us know, how has it been for you during this period so far?
It's been horrible. Absolutely horrible. I told Georgia that I was going to be extremely real because anybody who has known me during this period, I have been exceptionally honest about how I've been feeling. I've literally been sick during this period, and I think it was stress-induced most in the beginning stages of the online learning. So between March and say May, it was just too intense. We were not ready for it. So both my husband and I were professionals. So we're constantly busy. We have multiple meetings per day. And based on the type of environments we work in, people are constantly, calling us. So it's whether a phone call or virtual meeting. And I don't know about anybody else, but I think everybody feels you're much more you're easy to get to. So everybody wants to meet with you all the time, and you find you're working much harder. I have worked much harder in this year than I can't tell you. It has been extremely tiring. I can't wait for the holidays. For the boys now, my 6-year-old, I would say similar to Joseph, that he's quite a busybody. He does not like online school, and he makes us know about it almost every morning. Why do I have to go to school? So the separation of school and home no longer exists. School is now our living room, a place that used to be for fun. So even trying to wind down sometimes, you would leave work at say 6, 7, and you come home and relax a bit. Trying to turn off from work and then, okay, homework. Homework was another piece of drama. Because no, it is, you did homework, in phases and steps, but you're also trying to catch up on the things they may not have grasped during the day. And I remember in the beginning stages, the schools were trying to feel around what platform was best, because nobody was prepared for this. No matter how much we had the digital world at our fingertips, we never really tested it. And boy, did COVID let us test it. My 8-year-old now, he loves it. He was able to show us the different things he can do, and he plays with his friends and he gets on fine. In fact, the teacher said to us that he thrived during this period, and we have no issues with him. But I must tell you, Lisa, it has been a real challenge. And I have to admit, I'm glad when it's not my day to stay home. We literally have a roster, because the anxiety of, okay, will they be in a good mood today? Will they just work with the program? Can I get some successful meetings out of the way? And then I'm torn too. I want to sit and ensure that they're learning. I want to ensure that they are enjoying the process, and that they're not really missing out as much as we know they are. Thankfully, I have 2 boys who are friends. You know how it is with young boys or boys in general. So they're friends one minute, they fight another. But I don't know, if I had only one child in this period, I think it could have been worse. So I give thanks regardless, because at least being busy means that we can at least put food on our table and we can pay our bills. But it has been a real challenge.
Thank you. Thank you for being so honest about what is happening. I mean, a lot of times we're asking our parents, how are you doing? And everybody's putting a smile on the face. Oh, I'm doing well. And I know that most of us are struggling. I tell people on a daily basis that I am like this much immersed, and all I'm trying to do is to come out of 2020 with a little bit of my head above the water. And if I do that, I know that I would have accomplished. But you made a very good point about the home now being as a home, and it's also being served as school, which can be a little conflicting for our kids. How have you gone about, or what are some of the things that you have done to try to set that, if that's even possible this time?
Well, we created zones at home. So within the half of the term that was disrupted, we didn't have it together at all. And we realized the environment we created didn't help, especially the younger one, to be more comfortable in learning. So back to school now, September, we were really hoping to have some face-to-face. We were a little distraught with that, but we said, okay, let's set up the zones. So we know once you're in that zone, and we're still testing it. So the 8-year-old, I think, is more or less settled. For the 6-year-old, we still try to change it up. We look at how comfortable he is in a seated position, because a lot of us would not have had this sort of facility in our home. So we have had to look at what does the work zone look like in our home now. When we're at school, we're in the work zone. Try not to be distracted with what's happening outside, focus with what the teacher is doing. And I find also that once they're on a computer, something that is fixed, they can't move, then that helps. The tablets are not good at all, because they lift that up, they go and lie down on the carpet, they go and lie down in the couch, and you're just like, you're supposed to be in school. So yeah, so we've been testing different things. We have to keep evolving. My husband and I always say, okay, how can we improve? Discipline has been a big thing. And restriction to screen time. Of course, that's out the window now. So it's evolving. We say we go week by week. Once we can get 1 week out at a time, I am not planning much further than a week at a time.
Thanks again. Trudia, do you want to weigh in on that? So, I mean, Stacy mentioned the fact that things like screen time have gone through the door, discipline, how have you had to adjust in that way?
When the pandemic hit, and my 10-year-old is now at the PEP stage, And I am a stickler for going to bed on time. So I kept reminding him that he's not on holiday. So whilst it is that the schools were trying to figure it out, so to speak, I created a space that was a learning space that I actually tested myself to make sure that he couldn't hear the cars. And we were blessed enough to have a room that we could have dedicated for that learning environment. As a working woman also, it's virtually impossible to sit and monitor him all day. But for the first week, I had to do that. I sat beside him and made sure that he was doing what he was supposed to do. But I did have a conversation with him because that is not sustainable. So I got some cheap cameras on Amazon that I could speak to him through. So he knew that I was monitoring him. I also put an Alexa beside him that I could talk to him through. And as I said, I tested the area. I sat there for a day to see if I could get work done there. He goes to school. He doesn't use his tablet. He uses a laptop because, as Mrs. Herron said, with the laptop, they move around and they want to lie down and get comfortable. And it's hard for learning to take place. But the reality is sometimes that's what we have as a device to use. He has his laptop that he utilizes, and I ensure that he has on headphones. The 3-year-old, we registered her in school, and then school just was not keeping. So of course, like Mrs. Herron, I was shattered because she's the busybody. But as God would have it, I tried to do learning activities at school and at home, and I questioned myself a lot because my first degree is in education. And I thought to myself, why am I so short with my own children? The patience just was not there. But I think God saw my plight, and I was able to register her in school, a private institution that was still operating under ministry guidelines and permissions. And she started going out for 2 days a week, and now she's able to go for the entire week. So Mr. 10-year-old is still at home. And even when the pandemic was raging further up in the year, during the summer, we had to ensure that he gets up like he's going to school. So every day he gets up at 7 and every day he goes to bed at 8:30 because I couldn't have September hit and it was time for him to go back to school. And then he was in this lethargic mood of not going to bed till 12 o'clock. That would have been too much for me to try and correct. So bedtime, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is, you have to go to bed by 8:30. You have to wake up by 7:30. So I had to and even sometimes my mother was like, oh my God, it's the weekend. No, it's not. It is a day in the week. Go to your bed.
Wow, well, I really commend you for being able to maintain that kind of normalcy, because I know for a fact that a lot of parents are struggling with that aspect of trying to maintain some sort of normalcy, especially when it pertains to bedtime. I'm the mother of 3 boys. 2 of them are teenagers, and believe you me, it is a struggle. I've had to get creative to try to maintain those bedtimes, and I don't think I've got the solution as yet. I'm trying every day. There's something else to do, but how has that been for you, Mr. Herron? I mean, in terms of trying to maintain normalcy, trying to maintain routine, how has that been?
Well, thanks for asking. We have had to change our routines. Initially, our 13-year-old in second form, her initial attitude was, oh, this is not really school, so we had to get real hard on her, and put in the school that she attends, they're pretty strict with her. So she has to put on her uniform, or at least a top that represents the school. And we insist that she gets up early. They start at 7:30 and she is on at 7:30. So fortunately, we don't have to pay her much attention. During the course of the day, however, we will see her, as Trudy mentioned, sometimes we see her on her back she has a tablet and not a laptop. She's lying on her back, in class, camera is off, of course. Are you still in class? Yes, the teacher is teaching. And you hear the teacher in the background, but she's on her back and, and watching. you know. She does work, it's obvious, but at the same time, the level of concentration is not what we would want it to be, you know. She's doing well, but there are times when we say, you know, come on, you should be in school. You're not in school, you know, and she takes it very lightly. But kudos to her, she has responded very well. She went through a period where she was tired of her parents coming in her room and checking up on her and making sure she's doing well and asking her about this. She really missed her friends, really wants to go to school, but she has settled down nicely now, and she's doing well. With the others, that routine was a little bit more difficult because the previous routine, of course, get up in the morning, put on clothes and all that. No, we don't wake up as early. So of course they think it was simple, you know, they're not going to school. But they both put on their uniform. As I said earlier, the 6-year-old, she's excited. It's school, she put on her uniform. And the other one, no, do I have to do this? Do I have to go online? School every day? You know, the routine has changed. Breakfast time has changed. So they want to eat in the middle of class. So they turn off the camera, want to go to the kitchen to want food, you know. But for the most part, I mean, we struggle at times. I'm not gonna hide and talk, you know, but we do struggle. But for me, I have to find a way to enjoy the struggle. And what I don't stress myself over all the homework and all the work that I have to do. If I do that, I'm going to put up my hair and I hold up my hair, you see? So, because they give a lot of work. The teachers give a lot of work. They're very supportive, and lots of homework, but the younger ones require significantly more time, you know? So that takes from our time during the day, and we're both professionals. So we have to try and find the right balance. It means that we have a longer work day, or the work day stretches to midnight or past midnight. And then the routine starts all over again in the morning. What we do, we take turns. So one day I have the 5-year-old and my wife have the 6-year-old, and we alternate days. Because I may say this very quietly, we both prefer working with the 5-year-old. 6-year-old is easier, you know? So we have had time where we say, no, you work with her today, you know? And it gets tricky when we both have morning meetings. And so it is interesting. It is quite interesting. Let me use that word specifically. It's quite interesting, but I'm sure there are even more excited days ahead, and I look forward to them.
So one of the things I hear you saying, Mr. Herron, is that you, as a parent during this time, we have to sort of adjust. So if, not that we are compromising our standards, but sort of adjust what our expectations. So in terms of, you know, all homework must be done. If you really do get behind and try to stay on top of all the assignments that they're doing, I think we are going to suffer. So you really just have to try and find a way, as you said, to strike that balance. I'm going to put this question to Mrs. Dennison Herron. What would you say has been your greatest adjustment that was required during this pandemic?
That's a loaded one. The greatest adjustment. To be honest, as much as it's one of the vices, I do like the fact that I am spending more time with the boys. I wish it was more relaxing an environment, be home, and we really do some stuff that is enjoyable to all of us. But it is kind of nice, to see them learning about things, or they say, oh, mommy, X, Y, and Z, or, so you are a part of the learning process. Unfortunately, depending on when it's happening in your day, you may not appreciate it as much, but I do value the teachers a lot. No more than ever, I value those teachers. They put up with a whole lot. I know in the school environment, it is a lot easier to control them when they're amongst their peers. But just even the level of patience I've seen with the teachers, especially with the 6-year-old, I'm just like, they are a true gem. Also, I think it made us a little bit more resilient, or it is continuous. It's a continuous process, but my husband and I, we have to be organizing. So even this week, the school decided to do face-to-face for a few assessments. And we literally had to go into our calendar, decide who's doing drop-off, who's doing pick-up. So the level of organization has increased for sure, because, and we're making sure that no one parent is overexerted than the other. So it is increasing our planning skills. What would be nice also is I am looking forward to the holidays, just to get some more time to relax and play games, because one of the biggest things the boys miss is the activity. Thankfully, we have a space that we can say, okay, screen time over now. Go and run up and down outside, some football, something like that. But definitely, I'm looking forward to taking away some of the screen time and playing with them.
Awesome. Listening to everyone, it's a lot. And as parents, we tend to focus a lot on the kids and how the kids are managing. But I want to flip the script a little to see what we are doing for ourselves. How are we taking care of ourselves as parents? So Trudy, I'm going to put that question to you. What have you been doing to make sure that Trudy Ann is okay?
Well, I've recognized that it's not to my best interest to wait until I can get a weekend for myself or a day for myself. It's not in my best interest, because that weekend or that day may never come. So I take the incremental breaks that I get, and I'll share with you an example. My 18-month-old goes to bed at around 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I have actively decided that I have to go to bed by 11:30. So instead of sitting up and watching YouTube videos or watching a movie, I cannot do that, because rest now is so much more important to me. So between that time when he goes to bed, I take that time for self, to the point where an alarm goes off on my phone at 9 o'clock to love myself. So whatever it means at that point in time, whatever resources I have, if it means to light a candle and find a quiet place, if it means to sit somewhere comfortable on the floor, if it means a glass of wine, I have to love myself in that hour and a half or 2 hours, because by 12 o'clock, sometimes the 18-month-old is up. So I have to take the incremental times that are available to me and not wait on an entire day. I also recognized early on, after a breaking point though, that we all need help. We are not super people. We all need help. I tried to do it. We tried to do it ourselves. So even though we are in the pandemic, I had to see if I could get some help, like get a nanny, somebody that I had to screen, interview more in-depthly, because my children are compromised slightly, their respiratory system. And the question that you asked, Ms. Banton, if I may just weigh in on that also, my greatest adjustment is actually ahead of me, Ms. Banton. It truly is. It is reacclimatizing and readjusting and reintegrating into society, because at home I can keep them safe. At home I can, make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. But how do I keep them safe when they go back into society, when socialization is so important? So that is my greatest adjustment. It's ahead of me.
Wow. And I'm sure a lot of us can certainly identify with that. It's almost as though you're between a rock and a hard place.
Okay.
Know that, sending them back out to school is something that's a must. My story has changed so much during this time. No, I don't think they should go back to school. Yes, they need to get back out to school. it just goes back and forth. And I think it's important for us to know as parents that that is okay. It is okay for us to go back and forth today, being in, you know, that is okay. That is absolutely okay. And I really like how you spoke about loving yourself. That is so important, and finding that little time to love yourself, because sometimes, as you say, we think that we must have a whole weekend to love ourselves. But even if we get that half of an hour, if we get an hour, grab it and love yourself. I really like that. So I'm going to throw first to Mr. Herron and then to Mrs. Herron. How have you managed to maintain your relationship with your spouses, your friends during this very stressful time? I mean, for me personally, there are times when I think what comes my way, I'm just going to strangle them. So I have to take some breaths in and out and do my breathing exercises. How have you dealt with that during this time? Mr. Herron, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't hear it clearly. My understanding is that how do I deal with friendships and relationship with my spouse, and how do I take time for myself? Was that it?
Correct. During this time, especially.
Okay. Well, well, we adjust. We keep in touch with my friends. It's really cool. That part is really the simplest of all. Yes, we miss going out for the odd drink and linking up with my brethren them and playing some dominoes and whatnot, you know, but we don't have much of a choice. We simply have to adjust. What is even more critical for me is I love exercising. I love to jog. I love to play ball, and the ball part is probably the worst. And so jogging in the mornings is really critical before everybody's awake. That gets me out there. What also helps is I'm a night owl. However, when I prepare to bed, I find that I'm so exhausted. I end up, even if I plan to get up and do work, I end up going to bed with them and not getting awake until early in the morning. But I used to fight against it. I have no succumb, maybe not succumb. I have no accepted and surrendered. Okay, let me just sleep when they sleep and wake up earlier than I normally would and get some work done, or again, listen to some music or whatnot. My wife pretty much does some similar. Whenever she can go out and take time for herself, she goes and she will disappear and then she returns. So all that is fine. It's pretty much, you know, how we cope. When they are off to bed, we go alone and we try and, you know, are we okay? Are we gonna cope? How we coping? You know, how much hair you have left in your head, kind of thing. You know, but you really have to cope. We don't have much of a choice. You know, so when your back is against the wall, there's only one direction to go, and we don't really have much of a choice. You know, and I find it is counterproductive to complain or make a meal of it, because I am connected to some people who really they don't have the opportunities that we have. They're not as fortunate to have both parents in the house, to have 3 children with 3 devices. And so when I think about those persons who generally reach out to us for help, and we generally also help in one way or the other, for us to complain, it really makes no sense when you think about others who are simply not as fortunate. So I count my blessings, and we count our blessings every single day, that we actually have the opportunity, 1, to spend time with our children, and 2, to just give them all that they need. They are loving the time that they're spending with their parents. They are loving it. They feel more confident. They're significantly more in charge. You know, they would tell you that it's time to come to bed, mommy, so and so. I mean, their confidence has risen. So that is how I look at it. There was a time when I would have gone through a bad patch, you know, I'm sick of this. I really wanted to go back to school, but I kind of had to punch myself to say, yo, wake up, because you're either going to deal with it or you're not going to deal with it, kind of sink or swim. And that is how I've had to look at it. That's how I've tried approach it even when I feel a sinking. You know, I would call up Regine, I would say something to my wife, and invariably, you really do have to swim. You might need a life jacket every now and then, you know, but you really do have to swim. And it's important to keep those connections where you know, be able to identify when you're sinking, because there is going to come that time when you really will sink. And I will call on persons who I know I can call on, and they will help me get back to surface. And you know, all right, when you're going down again, feel free for call, you know, because those days will happen, you know. But children are loving it. If only they knew.
So you made some very, very good points. One of them is exercising and the importance of trying to exercise and still stay active during this period. I know it's really very difficult for some of us, but trying to carve out that time where you ensure that you stay healthy, because in order to manage all that is going on, you really have to look after your health. The other thing that you mentioned.
Sorry, I should have also added that when I exercise in the mornings, they insist that they exercise with me. You know, the two younger ones, anyway, the 13-year-old, nah, she no business about that. But the two younger ones, they insist on exercising with us. So our living room, I can't take them on the road. Our living room, we move out with all the tables, the chairs, everything, and it becomes a track and we run and we exercise and we do whatever we need to do. We go on YouTube and find something, and that part, I mean, they love it, you know.
Awesome. So that's also a period where you can bond with them as well. So you're just using all those opportunities. You also spoke about gratitude and just finding, you know, those things that we can give thanks for during this period. I know it's so easy for us to just look at all the negative, but you really do have to find those positives in the day, find those positives and you know, be grateful for it. The other thing that you mentioned was checking in with each other. So that's also a very vital, you know, thing that we must do, you know, say, wifey, how you doing? You all right? And also knowing when you're sinking and asking for help. That's something that Trudy Ann says. So she had to get a helper because that was her way of sinking, and she had to reach out for help. And I don't know about Stacy and Trudy Ann, but as mommy, my husband talks and say that sometimes I feel I have that S on my chest. I'm so I can do everything myself. And, you know, we just want to do, but we do have to recognize when there's a point that we have to say, I need the help. I'm sinking, please pass me that life jacket. So I really liked those points that you put out there, Mr. Herron. Stacy, what about you? How have you been managing? How have you been trying to maintain your relationships?
Okay, well, it has been, of course, COVID brought an added stress. Now, before we would be, you know, leaving in the morning, bye, have a great day, see you later. Now you're in the same space and we have different working ways. So whereas I may want a quieter environment to work in, he's fine with like the boys and all activity. He will say to me all the time, don't let them stress you out, to make them stress you out too much. But it's just how we work. We clearly work differently and handle the stress differently. I do want things to be ordered, or you know, I'm constantly cleaning up after them and trying to ensure that, okay, though yes, it is now school, I still want it to look like my house at the end of the day. So we literally go through this period. But one of the nicest things, and it's nice that Joseph said this, because exercise for a while, that has been my escape on a Saturday, especially when I go to boot camp. That's just like my way of getting all the energy and the stress. And no matter how, I will try my best to get up and do boot camp. And then at the beginning of the year, I also tried to say, you know what? I'm going to try and maintain certain amount of days of exercise. I haven't been perfect on that, but I still try. And for me, that gives me the extra energy to go through. I've tried to bring hobby into it, but he's just like consistent. I think he prefers to sleep. That's his way. He prefers to sleep. But on a Sunday, before all the rain started, we started going out to Palisados on a Sunday, and we make that family activity. We would go out there with the boys. It's the one day they get out, and it's like a nice and natural environment. and we run a few miles, we come back, we have a coconut water, and that's a simple activity, not very expensive. And it was like a complete release. We miss it so much now. The 8-year-old says, when are we going back out to Palisados? And one Sunday we went out there, and out there was full of jellyfish, and then it becomes like a learning environment. So we're talking about sea creatures, and it's refreshing. That part of this whole period has been refreshing. Trying to be creative, trying to stay connected. We had COVID birthday parties. My husband celebrates that milestone this year for his birthday, and it pushed me to think, how could I make him feel extra loved on this day with everybody all over the place? And and I think at the end of the day, he was happy, he was pleased. So it does, force us to kind of be creative. We don't know how Christmas going to go yet, because his mother's birthday is on Christmas Day, and normally it's a big family event for my family. So we're going to see how creative we can get with that. But it has really made us look outside of the box as it pertains to our fostering of relationship. We could definitely use more time for that, because we're mostly tired at the end of the day. But I guess it's a continuous goal for us to try and work on each other and then ourselves while taking care of the boys.
Okay, awesome. I love the idea of you going out to Palisados with the boys. And I say that to my parents a lot. Initially during this period, a lot of them were keeping the kids inside, not doing anything. And I said, simple things like, Palisados spots to go as well. Just going to just breathe, just having some fresh air. It just really makes such a difference. It really makes such a difference. So we're going to go back to Trudy, and I'm going to ask, do you think that there has been any adverse impact on you as a parent, given the new demands during this period?
Initially, my approach to my children and just having them wake up at a certain time, go to bed at a certain time, even in the summer, did cause some raised eyebrows, and it was like slightly conflicting amongst my family, because during the summer school was canceled, and I thought to myself, no, you all are still going to learn, because if September comes and everything open up, I can't afford to have you guys waking up at whatever time or going to bed at whatever time. So I had a little boot camp at home. Everybody did learning at some point in time, because I knew that the benefit would come in the long run, which I'm happy to say it did. Outside of that, though, it is the splitting of myself, because each child needs a different mother. So my 10-year-old wants more conversation, and all of them now want it all at the same time. So there's the 18-month-old grabbing to my leg. The 3-year-old wants some love, because I told her anytime she wants love, she should ask for it. And she talks in gibberish and English, so I have to be there. Yes, sure, yes, okay, and then still trying to have constructive conversation with the 10-year-old that's right there, and holding him accountable. Like, what did you do at school today? What did you do? And I can't just ask him, what did he do at school? I have to be specific. What did you do in science? Because I have to try and hold him accountable, because he needs to be able to respond to me. But when all three of them come at me at once, I would internally crumble. And then it felt like I didn't want any of them around me. It was just so much all at once that I would initially have to take a minute, find the bathroom, go in there, take a minute, and then come back out and then address them, because it was just so much pressure. One is on the leg, one is and everybody's like 6 eyes looking at you all at once, and that was a lot. And then there's work. So it's just having to split myself in 3.
I get that so much. That resonates so much. I completely understand that. And as parents, sometimes we feel guilty when we have that feeling of not wanting to be around them. But I think that it is such a normal reaction at times. I think, there are times when we do feel, can I just disappear, even if it is for 1 minute, just to breathe, and then I'll come back and I'll be so much more to deal with whatever situation there is out there to deal with. So I completely. I want to ask Joseph, Mr. Herron. So he's the one with the 13-year-old. So as a mother of teens, and I know we have parents out there in the audience, even though we can't see you. And I just want to encourage you, if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, if you do want to weigh in on the conversation, please feel free to drop a message in the chat, and we'll be sure to have a discussion around it. But for Mr. Herron, as I said, being the mother of 2 teen boys, so I have 3 boys. I have an 11-year-old, 14-year-old, and a 15-year-old. And I find this period especially rough for the teens because, they're just not being able to socialize as they want. I know the younger ones as well, but how has your daughter, your 13-year-old in particular, how has this impacted her during this period? How has it been for her in particular as a teenager during this period?
Okay, it has been really interesting watching her. I see her, I'm seeing her split personalities come to the fore, She, on one side, she is still a child. She is loving, fun-loving, jovial, immature, very childish, love to play, loves the attention. On the other side, she is maturing nicely where her schoolwork is concerned. As I said earlier, he misses her friends. And I'm concerned with that because as Shuden would have said earlier, socialization is critical, but socialization with her peers is as critical, is also critical. And we know that the adolescent period from now until 19 is really critical for their development. And so we allow her at times. 1 or 2 friends have come over. She has gone over, for example, gone out with a few elsewhere. Of course, we ensure that they follow the protocols that they need to. We are good acquaintances with her friends' parents, So occasionally she would say, "Daddy, Mommy, can I go here? Can I go there?" And that we find helps. She spends significant amount of time on the tablet or her phone, WhatsApping or whatever other social media platform they have. There's a game that she plays with her friends apart from socializing, and she enjoys that. But what the other part of it is, because her friends are not as involved in her life, she has become more in need for attention. And so she, in the morning, for example, usually we had to struggle to wake her up in the morning to go to school, on weekends as well. Nowadays, almost before the sun rise, she's up and in our bed, and so that can be a little bit annoying sometimes, but we kind of, we understand why. And so it's, I mean, my background being education and my background being psychology and counselor, I enjoy watching her grow and watching her go through these phases. So I'm always applying this and seeing that, and it doesn't really faze me because I expect it. As a guidance counselor, I saw all of her girls going through different phases, and I kept saying to myself, I wonder if and when I do have my daughter, what will it be like? So I'm seeing it. I'm actually getting the I guess the front row seat to this movie. And so I'm just amazed with how she's going. And she grew up as an only child for the most part. So she has developed the ability to entertain herself, But whenever she does want the attention, she is very demanding, and she won't stop until she gets it, you know. And so that part of it is also can be a little bit annoying, you know, but we deal with it. We have to deal with it in our own way. What has helped is we have set some new rules. So she has more house chores, and we would threaten her with more with house chores, you know. And but she's adjusting, and she might be complaining, but we say you complain more, you get more house chores to do. And that stops the complaining right away. But she's growing up nice, and I'm very happy for that.
Okay, so we have a question coming in, and someone wants to know, how does a parent with limited resources keep their child entertained during this time? Stacy Ann, you want to tell me about that? I can't, I'm not, unmute your mic, Stacy.
Yeah. So it's actually a lot simpler than we may think. It takes some work though. It may take some Googling, but for example, wanting to even make something like Play-Doh, right? You can Google that, get the ingredients, and that is an activity. Making the Play-Doh, so it becomes like a science experiment, and then they get to play with it afterwards. If you do have open space, all it takes is a ball, right? Or all it is that you teach them the games that we used to play back in the day, right? Simple up and down. No, of course, depending on the time of day, it might be they may complain because, you know, unfortunately, young kids these days, they're used to being in the house more. So, Lord, it's hard, sorry, so you try and make it an activity. Thank God, Daddy does more of that than I do. So he does the football. They've been missing things like swimming, unfortunately. So we haven't been to a lot of, you know, pools or beaches or stuff during the time. So they miss that a lot. But things like going to Palisades, as I said, I know it may be a distance, but you could do Emancipation Park. You know, thank God they're open again. So, you know, you can do a couple rounds, and depending on the time of day you go, you can also make an activity of that. And then there were other things. We bought more board games. And in fact, one of the 8-year-old learned to make a board game. So he made like Snake and Ladders, again, making it an activity that can become a game. That's one of the homework things, you know, so you learn to use that tool. But yeah, some of the things it may not have, you see, because we immediately gravitate to, oh, it has to be expensive, or it has to be something grand to appreciate it. But it can be small things. It could be, okay, I'm you know, going to buy you a particular treat that you may like that day. And for kids, that's the best part of it. I know it gets harder when you have teenagers. It's harder to convince them of these things. But for my 8 and 6-year-old, it could be like the simplest thing, and it's like the best thing ever. You know, so try to get creative, crafting. They love, you know, I make a thing of it, paint. You know, wanting to paint from art class, and they love that. Even trying to make things from art class that are supposed to be gifts to parents, and it's supposed to be a secret, is like the biggest thing for them, and the biggest joy to try and hide that from me. Like, I don't know what they're doing. But yeah, it's not what we are expecting, but it's taking us back to the times when we had very little screen time to appreciate. I remember one of my greatest memories as a child was my mother would come home with 3 videos for the weekend. One for Friday, one for Saturday, and one for Sunday, because we had no cable, right? But we learned, we read more, and we have been reading more. That doesn't really take that much. The libraries are still open if you can't physically buy books. So yeah, we're reading more. We do a few pages per night. And that's improving their reading as they go along, and they get creative with the characters. So yeah, try to even Google things if you're not sure what ideas to come up with. But a lot of it is taking us back to our own childhood times, ring games, whatever it is, you know. Get them out of the screen.
Very good point. I mean, most of our kids are, I mean, they let walk 2 steps without a screen and they talk about being bored because they just cannot. But I mean, just as you say, going back to those old games that we used to play, hopscotch, get a piece of rock and just draw out, you know, outside. Some of the things that I also do is just even putting on music and having a dance off in the house. Just simple things you can
do.
Yes, simple things you can do to get them entertained. Another question: how does an introverted mother with extroverted kids cope during this period? Joseph, Chudian, any one of you want to take that question?
Sure. You have to be prepared to meet them in the middle. It is already a beautiful thing that you can recognize the personality of your children, that they're extroverts. You have to show them the benefits of being an introvert. Meeting them in the middle means you have to converse with them. Even as an introvert, it would, I mean, based on my definition of an introvert, it's somebody who has a problem with talking to other people or like strangers, but this is your family. These are your babies. So it is important that even as an introvert, you speak to them, you communicate with them, you know, and as extroverts, they're already poised and ready to speak. So you have to be prepared to meet them in the middle. And this doesn't mean necessarily going out and spending money. Sometimes it's as simple as our children just want us to be present. So if it's even for an hour, sit down with them on the floor outside. You don't need a mat that you may have bought at Fontana. An old sheet or a sheet, because you can always wash the sheet, is what I tell my children. You know, just spread something outside and sit down. They may look at you like, Mommy, are you crazy? What are we doing? You can say, we're just sitting together, and then meet them in the middle.
Excellent. Excellent.
Can I weigh in on that?
Sure, go right ahead.
I asked my wife, she said, send them to daddy. Because our 5-year-old says, Mommy, we don't want to work with you. You're boring, but you give the best hugs and kisses. You know, but as Julie says, it's meet them halfway. And there are times when the good thing about having children at similar ages is they entertain themselves. At this young age, they really entertain themselves. So you really have to just give them the space, give them the tools, not, of course, clearly nothing dangerous, you know, and let them go. Because, you know, you can't cage them up, you know. So that's really what you have to do. And you can't use your introverted self and those characteristics of yourself to limit them. Yes. That will actually make you more stressed out, you know, because they will keep you up at night as well, you know. So I mean, I'm not an introvert, I'm more of an extrovert. So I'm having fun with, you know, and she pulls the others, the extrovert. So when she wants to go outside, she will come pull her introverted sister, you know. She can't pull her mother stays where she is, you know, but it's pretty much that. But there's so many things. Allow them to just explore.
Mrs. Banton, as an introvert, yes, more than likely, you're a good listener. And as extroverts, they're good talkers. And sometimes all these children want, and this is something I learned in the pandemic, during the pandemic, all they want is your attention. That's it. They want you to be present and they want you to be deliberately there. So if it means that you are actively listening to them, it means that you're not on your phone. You're just sitting and looking at them. What do you guys want to talk about? And just listen. Sometimes that's all they want, your attention, which is free.
Trudy, you really hit a nail on the head right there, for sure. Because sometimes as parents, we're so caught up in our day. Okay, at the end of the day, and we think, okay, it's our time now. And we're on the phone, scrolling, not realizing that that is also taking away from the time that we. So you're so right. Sometimes we have to, okay, not using the phone right now.
And that's not something that you buy at Fontana. Yeah. In order to really socialize with my children, what I've recognized is anywhere I try and hide and do some work when I'm at home, they're gonna find me. So what I do is I deliberately say, okay, it's time to go and lay down on the floor. And I literally lay down on the floor on my back. And who must crawl up, crawl up. Who must come sit down beside me, come sit down beside me. And then after 15 minutes, it's almost as if they're bored of me. But if I should move from off the floor, they're going to come and find me, which is why I say sometimes I just want you to be present, just there. I mean, to the question from the person who had limited resources, they just want you to be present. Find the sheet where you can wash in at the machine and spread it out on the floor if you have the space to do so. And just go outside, go lie down. We have Christmas breeze now. It's nice and cool outside. Go outside, go lie down. If it is that you don't have the yard space, find something on YouTube that you and them can watch together and be there and just be present with them. That's what they want.
Very, very, very true. So very true. So there's another question, and this has been, I think, for most parents, this has probably been one of the biggest adjustments. So we're going to go back to this about the virtual school platform. So I have 3 boys, as I've mentioned, and without giving too much detail so they don't kill me, you know, there's one who's really good, and there are the others that literally, they're how can we keep our kids, or what tips do you have for those parents out there having difficulty with their kids just not being engaged with by the virtual school platform?
Engage them, you engage with them. You know where their strengths are. You know your children. You know their strengths, you know what they like, what they don't like. And you engage them on that level, on their level. Some like math, some like reading, some like painting. You must start on their level with what they like, or else you will lose them.
Yeah.
It's not brain surgery for me, because parenting is not about the parent. It has to be about the child. So you have to start from what they like. Oh, that's automatic. And then you take it from there. You will have to show them, hey, I know you like that, and we've done that with you. We've done what you wanted to do, but guess what? No. We have to start with something else. We need to grow. We need to build on what you have and what you know. And we can do that incrementally, you know, and you build their confidence. Our children lack confidence to go outside of their comfort zone, but you take it slowly, baby steps. It's just that sometimes, especially now, we lose the patience and we lose sight of what we really should be doing. Although I'm an educator, I also lose patience with my daughters as well. And that is almost automatic. So you really have to catch yourself, you know, automatic. You have to catch yourself. It's not always easy, obviously. Every parent knows that, you know, but that is one thing. They like hands-on stuff. They like you being there. There's nothing a child likes more than your parents simply spending time. So if the time means in the home, under the table, 5-year-old, one day we could not find her. Where was she? Under the bed, literally under the bed, spending time, not doing anything, just under the bed. And so we went up underneath the bed with her, you know, and I want to talk, you know. And so she's more comfortable to explore in a different world. So we have to go into their world, and then so that they feel comfortable to come out of their world and come into yours. For me, that is really where I would leave it.
Ms. Banton, may I?
Sure.
Ben Carson, in one of his books, he referred to the fact that his mother could not read. She would send her children to the library to read books. They would also have to write book reports. She would collect these book reports, and then even after not being able to read, she'd say, good job, you know, this was well written. I realized that in order to properly engage with my son, because as I tell you, I cannot sit all day with him, as Mr. Herron had suggested. I am not unable to accommodate that like some other parents. You have to hold your children accountable. So you have to transcend how was school today. You have to be more specific. What did you do in science today? What did you do in math today? You don't necessarily have to understand the content. You would have spent your money and you would have bought the textbook. Sift through the content page of the textbook and pick a random topic. and ask them about it. Once they realize that, oh my God, mommy, go come home this evening and ask me what I do in maths. And you have to be consistent. If you ask them every day, what did you do in each subject, and you try to be specific, then they will hold themselves accountable. And of course, there has to be some penalty for not knowing, whether it is that you take away their tablet or you give them a timeout, or you remind them of the school fee, which is what I do with my 10-year-old. I let him know what his school fee is, and I hold him accountable. And you have to consistently hold them accountable. So you may not be able to sit there with them, you may not be there with them physically, but let them know that you expect them to learn because you are not on holiday. And I know it may seem harsh for some parents, but you have to ask these questions because you would have invested in your children. And it's important that you get a return, and it's important that you remind them that this is school, it's just a different platform.
Yeah, and the flip side to that too, Trudy, is that once they perform to that, you're willing to reward, and not necessarily rewarding things, you know, like money or items, but it could be the reward maybe, okay, you get an extra 15 minutes before going to bed, you know, or an extra 10 minutes on the tablet, you know, or something like that. So for them, they love.
That is a part of it. The reward for when they can answer you. What did you do in science? And they can tell you. My son is at a point, I say to him, I ask you the same set of questions every evening. And he sees disappointment on my face. I remind him of what we're working in. This is a pandemic and mommy still has to get up and be on the go. So all I ask you is, what did you do today? So you have to be willing to reward, as Mrs. Herron says, and you have to be willing to take away, but you have to hold them accountable. And remember that consistency is key. Ben Carson's mother could not read, but he could not leave the library without a book report.
Thank you. Thank you. Some very interesting questions that are coming in. I would like us to see if we can address most of them. And this is a very real thing that is happening during this pandemic. So somebody wants to know, what advice would you give to a single parent, mother or father, who at this time, they're facing financial struggles, they're still working, and yet they have to parent during this pandemic? And that is so, so real. Who's going to put that on?
I'm sure you want to go ahead, Stacy?
Well, I mean, no, I'll throw it over to you.
I know that many parents are actually going through this. I've had to speak with quite a few of them. And the first thing is identify your circle. Who's in your circle? There are, however, unfortunately, there are persons who really are literally alone. And those persons, I say to them, still find somebody and put them in the circle, drag them in if you have to, because it will not be pretty at all. And also have that conversation with your child or children. Have that very real conversation. Yeah, maybe not as real as an adult would, but have that conversation. You know, okay. I know it's difficult. What do we want? What do you want? How are we going to get there? How focused are we? I need your help. I, as a parent, I can't do this alone, my child. I need your help. Let us have that conversation. Don't be afraid to come and talk to me. I don't want you to go out there, you know, and make it very real, be very straightforward and frank with these children. They are extremely perceptive, right? And they know, they are masters at reading body language at times. So although you're telling mommies or daddy saying, no man, everything is fine, they know, you know, they know. So that is where I would start. Single parents have it extremely difficult. I would also go to when I work, I would speak to supervisor, boss, co-workers, you know, I'm gonna come in late today. Can I beg an extra hour, a half hour? I want to leave early, and let them know what difficulties you're having. If you try to carry this burden by yourself, burden is going to seem 10 times, 100 times heavier. You know, you have to share the burden with family, friends, co-workers, you know. Also, going home from work, I've seen some persons just talk to the driver, talk to the conductor, talk to the taxi man, talk to somebody at the bus stop. They're literally just offloading, you know, because they may not have somebody to talk to. They have their child at home to talk to, and they want an adult to talk to, and that's what they do, you know. So those adults out there, there are times when you must simply, I'm part of a group, and one person always says, check up on each other. Don't have to be a friend, just check up on each other, because the person who you check up on may not even know that you are having the same problem that he's having. And so hearing and sharing the different issues is going to give you strength as well, and may also give you additional ideas as to how to deal with your child and how to deal with everything that the child is facing, you know, because network saves lives and avoids some serious mental issues.
Thank you. And I think that answer, so there's another question here, and I think a lot of what you said just now would apply to this question as well. So what are some of the tips that you would give to those parents who are both frontline workers and are away from home more than before? And one of the things that you just spoke about is finding your circle. As you said, find your tribe, find somebody else who can help you out through that situation. Yeah, so for those frontline workers out there as well, if you want to take that one, I mean, is there anything in addition that you think that they can do when they're away from home that may help them through this situation?
Yeah, I mean, for the frontline workers, and it was extremely difficult, not only being away from your children, but also worrying every time whether or not you will be exposing them to things because of the type of job you have. So Joseph pointed out some really good suggestions a while ago. I feel that you do have to have that conversation with your employer. It may take some time initially to convince them that you can manage, but you need to explain to your children that this is teamwork. So, for example, if you find you work better, if you can do remote working for some instances, you know, work on some sort of system, whether with your other employee or your colleague at work, say, okay, if I work these days, and you know, if the system is flexible, so that you can work around the activities your children may be having. Also, you know, if you have grandmas, if you have friends, because a lot of times people may not be where family is, or they don't want to expose their family as well. So if you have similar friends, and you can, again, share the responsibility on a week-to-week basis. In some instances, especially frontline workers, it's not like they can carry the kids to work anymore either. So I know there are some services that are out there where persons are allowing students to come and they monitor them for particular, you know, during the school hours. And so you have to get kind of creative. The younger the child is, the more complex it gets. But I tip my hat off to those who are working on the front line and constantly being exposed and in danger, as well as those single parents who have very limited options. But this is where I think corporate Jamaica, the employees, do need to step in and be a little flexible. And that as the employees, we don't take advantage of that as well. That we show that we're grateful that they've given us the opportunity to work in an environment, to work remotely. And then it's like, you know, you have to plan around it. It takes a lot of planning. If it is that your children, you get quiet time at night or in the morning, plan around that. Maybe you go to sleep when they go to sleep and wake up earlier. So you know that you can get some good hours, because I think that's one of the biggest things, and I think Joseph alluded to it in the beginning, that we've lost so much productivity in this year because of, you know, just the change in things. So we also have to remember we have bills to pay and we have to maintain ourselves. So we have to try and find our best working model as well in all of this.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. What about those children who are quite anxious during this time? How do we deal with the anxiety of our kids during this situation, the questions that they may have And sometimes we ourselves may also have questions. We ourselves may also be anxious. Trudy, you want to say, speak to how do you think we can deal with the anxiety of our children when they have questions about all that has been happening?
Well, I would respond by just putting my answer for all the questions that have gone together with this one. You have to talk to your children. They are so much more resilient, so much more understanding too. And it is important that you have a network, but recognize that your child is already one person on your team. As Mrs. Herron said, depending on the age of the child, it may get a little bit trickier. But recognize that you have one person on your team already, and that is your child. This one person will actively listen to you, right? This one person, in comparison to talking to another adult, which also has its beautiful benefits, they are willing and ready to listen. As it relates to their anxieties, you have to be open and honest with them, because they also have to be cautious. We cannot pretend like this is not an invisible enemy that we are trying to win over. And they need to know and understand the realities of what is happening now. Something as simple as showing my 3-year-old how to properly take her mask off, because I don't want her to pull it down. I don't want her to touch it. So every evening I say, okay, let's hook it. Let's hook it. It's important that you empower your children with information. If, as an adult, information empowers you, it will also empower your children, and it will reduce their anxieties. And don't be afraid to let them know that, boy, sometimes I get worried too, but I know that we are going to get through this. So you can share in the anxiety, but only for a limited amount of time. As I am not a therapist, so I can only share with you what I do with my children. But I let them know that, boy, sometimes I'm not quite sure what's happening in this world either, but we made it through today. Let's do it tomorrow when it comes.
I think go ahead, Joseph.
Yeah, you hit on the head when you said do with your children. Have fun with them. I mean, that is their work. Their work is play and having fun. Yes, the younger ones will require more fun. Even the teens, they do require having fun. So have fun with them. The University of Google, the YouTube has a lot of information that you can simply share. There are things online that are age appropriate for your children. You can learn together. I was no fan of the screen time. It's something that my wife and I a lot of time would disagree on, but spending time in front of the screen with them makes a massive difference. If they're interested in cars, if they're interested in whatever superheroes, whatever it is, and of course you can show them your interest and you can research together, find out together, whether it is school or it's just simply fun, watching some comedy or anything at all, playing a game. You do that with them, take a load off. You simply shut out the world and get into that simply pure enjoyment with that person, as Trudy said, who's already on your team. And that will just help with the stress level.
Mr. Herron said something, I'm sorry. Mr. Herron said something very important. Step into your child's world. How you interpret anxiety may not be how that child interprets what is happening in the world. So you have to ask them, what do you think is happening now? Are you afraid? To get their idea of what is happening in their world. And as Mr. Herron said, the only way you can do that, the only way you can empathize with their child is if you deliberately step into their world.
So that's a very good point, Trudy Ann, in terms of, the level of the child. Because what I may say to my 3-year-old, I may not really say to my 15-year-old. So it's going to have to change. And one of the things that I also suggest in terms of dealing with anxiety. So yes, whereas we do have to give them information, we have to be careful with the information that's being fed to them. So we have to make sure they're getting getting correct information. We're not giving them information that's not useful to them. So knowing the number of cases per day and that sort of stuff may just induce more anxiety. So you really just have to sort of filter the information. And as parents, I think we too have to model the behavior that we want them to, be careful with with the things we say and how we act, because they look to us for guidance on how to navigate the situation. So, we just have to try and model that behavior. So there are some children out there who are having it extremely difficult to organize their assignments and get organized. How, as a parent, do we deal with that child who is needing assistance to organize assignments, get organized, but yet we don't want to completely take over? How do we deal with that child?
For my 10-year-old who is prepping for PEP, you have to step in. Get your cartridge paper, get your marker, make sure that their timetable is in their eye shot. And I always say, hold them accountable. Gone are the days when you can just stop at how is school. You have to be specific now, because that is the only way you will know whether learning is even taking place. And put their books where they can find it. Help them to organize their little space. They're going to be there for the day as if it's school. If they were in class, probably sometimes their books are packed neatly to the side. Help them to organize their space in as much as they can, if it's even a corner, to mimic what their organization in the classroom setting would be like.
Okay.
I agree with Trudy on that as well, because for us, every morning we look at the newsletter, we say, okay, what do you have today? Let us make sure we have all the materials. And that takes away some of the anxiety, because we find, especially for the 8-year-old, he gets flustered if he can't find everything in time, because of course he wants to make sure he has everything for the teacher. So we find just organizing at the beginning before they log on for class, that everything is in place. You have your pencils, you have all your materials for art class and everything. That helps. As well as we have a tag system on weekends for doing homework. So it's agreed. I will compile all the homework to be done, and my husband will work through the homework. Depending on how much it is, we may have to split it up, and we alternate between children. And then the uploading is a whole nother job. It's like we've taken another full-time job. And then to take the pictures of the assignments, what needs to be emailed, what needs to be uploaded on the program. So he said, okay, that is you. So I will do that afterwards. And I find the system works. In order to get some semblance of just order in our life, we have to plan. We have to plan and make it simpler, the process simple, so that we can reduce the amount of anxiety and issues that may arise. Now, yes, things kind of throw us out sometimes, but if we can plan around it, or if we can try to reduce that, I find it really makes the day much smoother. And for the children too, they go through the day more relaxed.
Yes. What about those kids who are hyperactive, and now we are expecting them to sit in front of a screen for long periods? What advice or what suggestions would you have for a parent who's faced with such a child?
There are avenues. There are avenues that you can take. Reach out to the school. There are persons who are trained to address those issues, as most parents clearly are not trained to do that. But reach out to the school. Some schools have teachers, have guidance counselors who can give you pointers on dealing with it. It will be critical that as a parent, you get and you utilize those pointers. You can also go online and learn yourself. This is not necessarily an easy thing, but ADHD, as you mentioned, it can be addressed, but with attention, hands-on attention. And as a parent, you have to understand and accept that. No, as Stacy just mentioned, the organization of that and being calm as a parent, a child with ADHD or ADD, you really have to remain as calm as possible and know your triggers, right? And simply step away and get help. I cannot stress how important it is to get professional help, professional advice when you have a child who has been diagnosed with those kind of disorders. It's extremely critical.
Thank you, Joseph. So we have to wrap up pretty soon, but there's this one question, and this is so very real. I think we just have to quickly touch on this. So there's some parents who see school as a mean of escape for children, especially those children. Do you think that, no, that's not, sorry, my apologies. What advice would you give to a student who before COVID used school to escape the stress of home and is now stuck at home to go through all of this alone? Now, this is such a real thing. You know, they no longer have their friends to talk to. They don't have the teachers to turn to. How can we help those students? What can we suggest for such cases?
Talk. As a parent, as I said earlier, you must know your child and realize that this is gonna affect your child more than you'd want. So you put things in place. You know the child depends on socializing with his children. So as much as possible, organize moments of where they can socialize with their friends online. Organize the Zoom birthday parties or the Zoom lives, phone calls, WhatsApp, you name it. Play games, organize that. They have, I see my daughter playing a game. I can't remember the name of the game, but them playing me. So we playing with, she's playing with her friends from school. And it's a video game. I know they have tons of games like that. So go into that world and explore, and also get closer to your child. Unfortunately, children like that will find avenues, and you have to ensure that you put the avenues for them to find rather than them finding it on their own.
Thank you. So I want to thank all three of you, Trudy-Ann, Joseph, Stacy, for such a good discussion. I'm sure there's so many points that our parents out there can take home. The need for exercise, gratitude, find your circle, find that circle and reach out to someone. Know when you need help. When you feel as though you're sinking, don't be afraid to say, please throw me that lifeline. Check in with each other, check in, Stacy-Ann, how you doing? How you managing? Anything I can do to help you to get through this? Just check in with each other. And as we draw tonight to a close, I really want to thank the Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work, the Child and Adolescent Health Mental Health Services Western Regional Health Authority, and the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Unit of the Ministry of Health and Welfare together this parenting conference. I mean, I don't think anybody, there's too much advice. You can never get too much advice as a parent. I mean, if only we had that manual that we can turn to, but unfortunately there's no such thing. I don't even think that is possible because you have 3 kids, they all need to be parented differently. So when you can get that advice, we are really grateful. So thank you to the organizers, thank you. And we look forward to 2021, where we don't have to be discussing about parenting during a pandemic. Hopefully that's still not relevant, but thank you so very much to the panelists. Thank you so very much to the organizers. Very much to you, the audience, even though we can't see you. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for those questions. And I hope that this has been an enlightening discussion for you. And hang in there. We will just keep your eye focused on that light at the end of the tunnel, and you will get through it. And just remember that sometimes as parents, we forget to look after ourselves, but we cannot fill from an empty cup. So we have to look after ourselves if we want to be there for our kids. So just keep hanging in there and look after yourself. Thank you so very much, and have a pleasant night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.